Hello everyone, my name is Darren McGarvey, also I'm known as Loki the Scottish Rapper. I am a writer and a performer based in Scotland, and I'm doing a series of vlogs in support of my Fringe show, which is running throughout August at the Edinburgh Fringe obviously. Today I wanted to talk to you about an opinion expressed by a writer and performer whose work I have a great deal of respect for, Ricky Gervais. So he tweeted yesterday the following: opposing left-wing extremism doesn't mean you support right-wing extremism. Opposing right-wing extremism doesn't mean you support left-wing extremism. You're allowed to hate all extremism. There are loads of other choices. Also, stop wasting milk. So this is in reference to the kind of popularised through media story of people on the far left throwing milkshakes at people that they think are fascists, and the developing narrative around that, which is that people who behave that way on the left are just as bad as people on the right who are advocating a lot of the distasteful things that they're in support of. He also tweeted out the following: whatever side you're on, politically left or right, you don't need violent factions joining you or representing you. They bring your cause into disrepute. They don't care about your cause. They're just in it for the violence. Denounce them. Okay, so in these particular tweets, Gervais is very much adopting the persona of the calm, rational, objective, political moderate who believes, among other things, in free speech and that dangerous or bad ideas are best combated with better ideas, and that in the free market of ideas, all of these things will iron themselves out, and that there is no need for violence, and that regardless of what the intention is behind the violence, it can never be justified. So ultimately, that is what you would call a kind of moderate or centrist perspective. Now, the first thing I want to deal with is that while obviously coming from that calm, rational place, what I feel perhaps it doesn't sufficiently deal with is the fact that Gervais, like everyone, has a red line which, when crossed, will cause him to discard all of those aspirations to be calm and objective in favour of becoming very impassioned and maybe behaving in ways that you would find on the far left or far right. Perhaps maybe not being violent, but certainly advocating it in some way. I refer to a tweet that he posted earlier on in the year where he basically said, and I quote, I want to kill this cunt, and posted a video of a dog being horrendously abused. So the red line for Gervais is the issue, and a very laudable issue at that, of animal cruelty. Please excuse the very unsophisticated laptop camera. The sun's moving around at there and it's changing the light. Anyway, so Gervais, obviously, he gets very hot and bothered, and quite rightly, when he finds that wild animals or domestic pets are being subjugated or neglected or being viciously beaten and any other form of cruelty, and I have a lot of respect for that. He has an affinity for animals and perhaps people on the far left who are throwing milkshakes in defence of people of colour, of Muslims, of LGBT people, then perhaps that's because they have an affinity with people. And so maybe the threats from the far right, which are being expressed at every level of our society now, then perhaps those people feel as threatened or as repulsed by those threats as Gervais feels in his calm, rational, objective, centrist world about the idea of animal cruelty. So now that we're on the subject of the centre ground, I want to go back to this idea of drawing an equivalence between the far right and the far left. Ultimately, because they depend on aggressive political behaviour, and because often political action is underscored by at least the threat of violence, then a moral equivalence can be drawn between them. However, in the centre ground, there are certain times where people have made a great deal of effort to make very careful distinctions between different forms of violence. I want to bring you back to the Iraq War very quickly. So basically, the two main pretexts for the Iraq War, or certainly justifications for it at the time, were that we were entitled in a post 9/11 world to make a preemptive strike against potential threats to eliminate those threats and eliminate the possibility that indiscriminate killing and death would be visited upon us here or in the societies in which these dictators or terrorist groups were operating. So the preemptive strike, that was the very first principle. The second principle was that while obviously we would be dependent on violence, the violence of war, then ultimately that violence was of a different quality because of the intention underpinning it. So often you will hear, if you go on YouTube, you will see Tony Blair making arguments that the terrorists would kill indiscriminately, whereas when we go to war, we make great effort and take great care to try and minimise civilian casualties, and that this is what differentiates our violence from the terrorist violence. So that's two important points to bear in mind there, that often we can make distinctions between forms of violence when we want to, and you only really have to look at how much interest someone like Tony Blair continues to generate to see that whether people in the centre who regard themselves as moderates admit it publicly or not, at best, then they buy into Blair's rationale for the Iraq War, while obviously accepting that mistakes were made, and that ultimately the fact that he is still granted relatively free movement in public life and still generates, as I say, a great deal of interest. This shows that for all of the damage that was done because of the violence that he ultimately greenlit, then that ultimately still wasn't bad enough for people to basically revoke his public life pass. So there we see areas where it's possible to make distinctions between different qualities of violence. And so really all I would say is that first, if you have a red line and you lose your shit, you can't go and tell other people not to lose their shit when they feel threatened or disgusted by other behaviour. And also in the centre ground where people talk about being more moderate and rational and objective and diversity of viewpoints and making distinctions, then obviously you have to say that if you can make a distinction at the level of foreign policy, which involves thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people being injured or killed or displaced as a result of war that was launched on a pretext of making distinctions between Western quality of violence and terrorist quality of violence, then you can relate to somebody who are feeling threatened by the ascendancy of the far right. They might have a visceral gut reaction, and they may believe that a strawberry milkshake is the only weapon in their armoury to express their fear, displeasure, or in some way resist what they believe to be an incursion on their personal freedoms. I wonder what your thoughts are on all of that. Just spitballing some ideas here. And as I say, I'll be at the Fringe all through August in Edinburgh. I would love for some of you to come along and see it. This is the sort of thing that I'll be doing, thinking out loud, trying to find the ironies in things, and also a fair bit of self-deprecation, which I'm sure some of you will be finding quite entertaining. The link for tickets is below. I hope you have a great day. Take it easy. Peace.